this yet. You have to remind me if I have. But I did a little missions work over in China years ago with my wife. And we had the opportunity to visit a small house church over in China. You ever heard this story before? Did I do this one yet? Okay, it's a good one. So we were over there doing missions work over in China. And we were talking to people. We do a thing called friendship evangelism. So you just meet people, talk to them, hang out with them, do that kind of stuff. So we're doing that. And, you know, you have some good conversations with people. Not a whole lot goes on. We got a chance to go to one of the big churches. The Communist Party sanctioned you can go to this church and not get arrested. We went there. It's okay. Then one of the people we ran into, they said, come here. I was like, what's up? And they're like, we got a secret church we want you to come talk at. And I was like, ooh. I got excited. Like, it's like the big leagues. This is like, these people over there, they be praising the Lord, and if the Communist Party finds out about it, they go to jail. They've been doing this for years, and they're like, we want you to come over. So I say, yeah, let's do it. So I get I'm thinking about, well, they want me to talk. So I sit down and I write down all the stuff that I think sounds good, and all these good ideas that I have out of my brain. I'm like, I'm gonna put together a nice, finely crafted message, and we'll give it to them. And so we're riding the bus over there, and I'm sitting there smiling, like, yeah. And as I'm riding, God goes, we're not doing that. I said, we're not doing what? Like, what you just did, we're not doing that. And I was like, well, what are we gonna do? He says, you're gonna talk to him about speaking in tongues. And I was like, but, okay. So I start writing it down, and my wife's with me, and we were just a fiance at the time. As I'm writing stuff down, she says, what you doing? I said, well, I'm changing everything. She says, what are you changing it to? I'm like, we're gonna talk about tongues. And she's like, you better have heard from God, those are the words. Because around here, we're friendly with that. Like, we do that. But there's literally churches that have, like, been divided, and people have, like, ran off in fits of rage because people wanted to talk in tongues. So it's a topic that sometimes, depending on who you talk to, you can get varying results. So she's like, you're going to go in there and just going to drop that. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. And so I went in there, and it's probably one of the more humbling experiences I ever had. Because you have these people, the literal persecuted church, right? That have been doing this on the download. They love God so much that they're like, if I go to prison tomorrow, I'm blessed. There's my 20-something-year-old American self being like, I don't know if I'm going to go to church today because, like, you know, I only get like 6 hours of sleep, so, man. So we walk in the place, and, like, when the people look at me, God hits me so hard that I just kind of, like, I have to reorient myself to reality for a minute. And standing there, I was like, I'm going to take all of my cool thoughts and wisdom, I'm going to throw that in the trash, and I just want to sit and I want to listen to you. They said, no, do your thing. And I was like, okay. So I do my thing, and I start talking about stuff, and I start talking about speaking in tongues and the interpretation of tongues and that kind of stuff. And the guy's wife starts crying. And I'm like, did I do the thing that I was afraid I was going to do? Did I, like, offend somebody? Did I make somebody think something different? And then she says, sometimes when I pray, I say words that aren't real words, and I feel guilty because I think that I'm being disrespectful to God. And I was like, no. This is something you can do. This is a gift. This is a blessing. And she was able to speak. There was interpretation. God totally showed up and knocked the ball out of the park. And I left that experience very humble, because on the ride over, all of my cool thoughts and words and stuff was nothing. Our righteousness is filthy rags, y'all. So today as I talk, I'm keeping that with me. I want to give a little space sometimes for God to move and to do stuff. So I'm going to talk about some stuff, but if you get me little awkward pauses of me just standing here trying to listen, maybe that's my thing. Maybe my thing's ego. I think that I can have the cool, like, thing to put together in a nice little format to really, like, drive this point home, and, like, it's not what it is. So today we're going to take a little trip through the story of David. Everybody knows David. We've heard the story. We got the highlights. We got David and Goliath, right? Throws a rock, kills a giant. You know that one. You know, probably David's troubles, right? Who knows David's troubles? What did he get in trouble for? Bathsheba, yeah, we know his troubles. But there's a thing that happens to him consistently throughout that you kind of miss if you don't look at the whole story, if you don't take the whole thing in context. So we're going to start with 1 Samuel. If anyone's got their Bibles, they can read along. I'm going to start in chapter 17. So I'm actually going to start with the story of David and Goliath. But I'm going to focus on one little part of it, and we're really going to try to unpack that one. So as you know, at this point, Saul was the king of Israel. After Israel begged for a king, God said, you don't want one. Well, we want one anyway, so they get Saul. Saul's a decent guy, but he kind of, he loses it a little bit. So God's like, well, on to the next guy. We're anointing David. So David's been anointed. Samuel picked out David and said, this guy's going to be the next king. This is our guy. He's not there yet. Saul's still the king. So David one day goes to see his brothers at war. Goliath's out there beating his chest saying, God, your God's nothing. I'm going to stomp everybody. Everyone's too afraid to fight him. David, a young boy, comes up and he's like, what's this? What was it? What is this uncircumcised Philistine saying about the Lord of hosts? Or something epic like that, right? And then he says, I'm going to go fight him. And for whatever reason, they think this is where they're taking him to the king. They take him to the king, and the king's like, yes, you're going to go fight him. Here's my armor. Put on my armor. And now's when it gets different, right? Because David puts on armor, and it says that he tested it. Like he moves around in it. And he's like, I can't do this. This is not my armor. And here's the interesting thing about that. David was anointed to be king, right? He's been chosen to be king. He's being offered the armor of a king. It's like high quality stuff. This isn't just like take some regular, take this guy's armor and go run with it. No, this is the king's. He's being set up with the king's clothes. And he takes it off and he sets it down. That's not who he was. When he talks about fighting Goliath, he talks about the lion and the bear and how he overcame these things. And he didn't overcome it with kingly things. He came up with his own stuff, right? And so I think this is where my analogy begins is when we think about who we are. Like the song said, who am I that you are mindful of me? That first part is what I want to focus on. Who am I, right? And I'm going to ask everyone the question, are you trying to wear somebody else's armor? That looks different for some folks. So I'm not going to lie, I do that sometimes. There are times when I come into the church and I see somebody else and I see how God made them and they're awesome. And I look at myself and I'm like, oh, can I be like that? Can I change how I look or act or something about me so I can be like that? And I'm here to say today to say, no, that's not how that works. God made each and one of us to be who we are. We have a certain way that we do stuff. It's not going to be like somebody else's. We can't put on their armor. We can't put on their life. We can't put on their stuff and expect everything to be fine, because that's not the answer. God knows you. He put you together the way that you were supposed to be, on purpose, not an accident. And some of those things about yourself, and I'm talking to me when I say this, some of those things about yourself that you think maybe, not my favorite qualities, God's like, that's there for a reason, and that's on purpose. And you never know that until you test it, until you go out and you live your life and you be who you are, instead of trying to look at yourself through the eyes of someone else. And so the question I got for everybody is, what is it the thing that makes you unique, that you do? And there's a difference between God made me to do this and God made me and I do this. You see the difference? Like what comes out of you when nobody's watching, when it's like a reflex, it's like an impulse. I have a only slightly blasphemous story I can tell you. Well, not blasphemous, but rude story I can tell you. I was out with my friends when I was much younger and not really following God, and so we were out at the bars and everyone had a little bit to drink. We were walking home and this guy and this lady start arguing, and he's grabbing at her and she's trying to pull away. It was with me and 4 people. 4 people walk the other way, and I walk towards the problem. And I was like, something's not right. I want to figure out, I want to help somebody. My friend's like, what are you doing? Don't get involved in that. Someone's going to hit you. And I'm like, And then I didn't think much of it until years and years and years later, and now here I am. I work in law enforcement. I'm a police officer. I'm the guy that shows up to those phone calls. People call me up and they're like, oh my gosh, my husband's being crazy and breaking stuff in the house. Come over. And I go, okay. Because there's something in me that can't let that sit, right? And sometimes it takes us a minute to kind of orient and realize that not everybody's like us. Like I said, 4 other people walk the opposite direction. But there was something in me. God made me a certain way. Like even when I wasn't listening to God, even when I wasn't on my A game, I wasn't prayed up, I was just being me. And I saw something, and there's something in me that cried out. Something in me just couldn't let it be. Those are the things that make us who we are. That's our armor. Those are our weapons. And we're using someone else's, right? We're using our own, the way that God made us individually. So what's your gifting? Hospitality? Are you one of those people that, like, people are coming over and you're like, yeah, I got this. I'm going to get this set up. I'm going to put this there. I'm going to put this there. If that's you, God bless you so much, because that's not me. Man, like people coming over and I'm like, are you sure they want to do that? I gotta pull the kid off the table and like, is it prayer? When someone says, will you pray for me? What's your response to that? Are you one of those people like, oh, sure. Or are you like, ooh, that sounds like a lot of work? Or is someone's like, yeah, I'm gonna pray for somebody today. Find those things in your life. Find those things that make you who you are. Lean into those. Those are your weapons. So there's David. He does his thing, kills Goliath. Woohoo! That's the end, right? Nope, story keeps going. So Saul sees that. Sees, oh my gosh, this David guy, he's a pretty cool cat. I'm going to have him over. Brings him over to the kingdom. He's part of the kingdom. This is in Samuel 18. The next chapter afterwards is Saul resents David. Like, oh, that went bad so fast. He went from, David, you're the best, take my armor, to like, ooh, I can't stand that kid. But he's the king, so he keeps him around. And then, maybe it gets better, so let's go to the next chapter, chapter 19. Saul persecutes David. So now we've moved beyond it. We've moved beyond, like, somehow it's going downhill faster. We started off with, David's the best, I love him, to like, I kind of don't like him, to like, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him. Culminates one day, if you read the story of David, where Saul's having a big feast, and David's like, he's probably going to kill me during this feast. And so he gets his buddy, Jonathan, and he's like, I'm going to go hide, and tell me if your dad's going to kill me or not. There's Saul feasting, he's like, hey, where's David at? Where's he at? Come on, find that guy. And Jonathan's like, oh, we good? No, he's like, no, where's he at? Jonathan's like, David, you got to run. So there's David, anointed king. God's like, you're the next king. Goes, kills the giant. He does the deed. He's the man. Now he's like running for his life. So David, being him, made his life get worse. How does that work? That's a hard word right there. Here I am telling you, find that thing that God made you to do, and do the thing. And then we look at David, and God made him to do the thing, and he did it, and his life got worse. How do we manage that? I think it's in that word we had at the beginning, tested. Sometimes we don't know how to use what we got unless we're forced to use it in stressed conditions, right? Is it really part of you if it goes out the window and you get mad? Nope. I'm here to tell you it's not. I've done a lot of training. I did jiu-jitsu, wrestling with people and stuff, and you don't know it unless you can do it when you're stressed out. That's for sure. Same thing with ball players. Like, what do you think of those football players that go out there and the big game comes and they freeze? They don't know it. It's the guys that handle it under pressure. Those are the ones you're like, that guy's got something. Same thing for us. So here's David being tested. He's got the pressure on him. So he runs away. David runs away. And this is the part of the story not a whole lot of people know. He runs to a holy place with a bunch of priests. And he shows up and he's like, I need food, I need shelter, I need some kind of weapon because people are out to kill me. And so the guy's like, well, we only have this like show bread that we got, this holy bread. And David's like, gimme, I'm gonna eat it. And the priest is like, okay, let's go for it, I guess. And he's like, I need a weapon. He's like, what do you got? And then here's the kind of fun part where it comes full circle. He's like, well, the only weapon we have around here is that relic that you brought us, the Goliath sword. David's like, give me the sword. So he's like, so he's upgraded, right? He's not sling and stone guy anymore. Like, all of a sudden, he's got David's sword. So what does this tell us about how God made us? Does it stay the same all the time? Amen. The person you are when you're 20 going to be the same person as when you're 40? There's going to come a time where that's going to change. It's going to be a little different, right? Maybe your weapons get upgraded. You go from sling to Goliath sword. That's kind of a cool one. Maybe you're the kind of person that you want to sit back and see how things pan out. And I don't want to get up and talk in front of people, and that's just who I am. I'm shy, I got anxiety, all this stuff. What if God made you to talk? And because you're shy when you're younger, you want to hold on to that, think that's a part of you, and not adjust to the new reality that God's presenting you with. So here's my trick. Here's how you can tell if God wants you to do something that maybe you might not want to do. You wait for the heart to speed up. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Where someone's like, I need somebody to pray for this person who's been struggling with depression. So anyone who's overcome this demon who wants to pray for this person and give them deliverance, stand up right now. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's you. That's the time when you get up. That's the time when you stand up and you go, yeah, that's me. Own that. Recognize that change. Be okay with that change. Like, yeah, when I was 20, I was bad at talking to people. I was bad at it. It was full of ego. It was full of pride. It was full of unworthiness. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do this. I couldn't do that at 20. No way. I'd make a mess of it. I can do it now. Because God's changed me. I've grown. Isn't that the point? Isn't that why we do this? To grow? If you look the same today as you did 5 years ago, why are we here? Why are we here? What are we doing? What are we doing here? You watch songs on YouTube. You can hear sermons on YouTube. If it's not producing any kind of fruit in your life and making you look a little different than the person you were before, what are we doing? We got to embrace that. We got to welcome that in. We got to discern what is and isn't good. I'm not saying do whatever you feel like or throw yourself into positions. That's exactly what I'm talking about not doing. Don't put on someone else's armor. Be honest about where you're at right now. Be honest about where God's growing you. And if you get called to stand up and pick up Goliath's sword, you do it with a smile. Because that means God's moving, he's doing stuff. So let's think about this. So David's eating holy bread and picking up Philistine swords. So either he was acting a fool or the weapons changed. And he did that on time to time. But here's an interesting story you can pay attention with David. God is very on it with David. When David does something stupid, God tells him right there, you messed up. And David's response is always the same. He's like, yeah, I did. That was a bad call on my part. Where do we go from here? So we can watch this story sometimes as it plays out. And when David does something, when God goes, yeah, you're good. You can see those moments happening. This is one of them. So there's David, got Goliath's sword. He wanders out. His family's afraid that they're going to get caught too, so he takes his family with him. And then he gathers up a gang of hooligans, gangsters, and pirates. Basically, if you read it, it talks about all the outcasts, all the undesirables, all the people that have been exiled, all rally around David. Which is one of those things like, oh, that's so cool and noble, but like, hold up. What would you think if they were like, oh, Pastor Jared, yeah, he was going to be the next police chief, but now the current chief wants him arrested for conspiracy, and now he's running around in the woods with a bunch of guys with super long beards and camouflage and a militia, and they're kind of dispensing vigilante justice out in the woods. Would you go, oh, how great for him? Like, no, you'd be worried. He'd be like, something's going on with them that is not good. And David had that opportunity to do something not good, right? Because he's basically a gang lord at this point. Like he's only loyal to God in his heart or to Israel in his heart because the king wants him dead, right? The Philistines want him dead. Everybody, he's got no affiliation right now on paper. He's running wild. He could easily, and this is the funny part that I think, is he could easily, could have turned that and be like, you know what? Let's bring down Saul. Right? He's been anointed king. The prophet said he was going to be king. He's got the startings of an army. Saul's coming looking for him. He's like, we'll just ambush him, take him out. I'll take the crown, hold it in the air. Everyone cheers my name. That's his, right? You're going to buy a house, and someone says, this is your house now, but they're still living in it. If you go in there and you kick them out and you live in the house, that's real good, right? But there was something that happened there where David knew who he was. He knew what his armor looked like. So he said, no, I'm not going to do that. So what did he do instead? He saw bandits attacking a nearby village. And you got to know all of his cronies were like, let's go get him. And he goes, wait, hold up. We're going to check in with God first. God, should I go and pursue these fiends? And God was like, hey, go get them. So we went and got them. But it's that act, though, that first is like, God, should I? And I guess there's another idea when I want to talk about a little bit, is even if it's in our wheelhouse, even if it's something that we're supposed to do, even if it's something that's good, sometimes maybe check in first, right? You know? It's like even myself, like I like to solve people's problems. I like to go in and figure it out and have a peaceful resolution to stuff. I like doing that. There's going to come a time where something's popping off that God's like, not you. And it may not even be me. Maybe it's somebody else, you know? We've got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. This could be a racial component. Maybe someone had a bad experience with a white cop, and I show up, and I'm the wrong guy for that situation through no merit of my own, but just the situation. And I got to know when to discern that and to back up and be like, all right, Dion, you get it. So David continues to run from Saul. Saul, it was once again funny. You'll hear like, yeah, Saul tried to get David. And you're like, yeah, that makes sense. He doesn't like him. But like, let's think about this. He's ruling a kingdom. He's in charge of a nation. He wakes up in the morning. They're like, all right, king, what do we do to lead our nation forward? And he's like, kill David. He's like, well, okay, then, yeah, we'll send some people out. I was like, no, I'm gonna ride out with some guys, and we're going to go kill him. Like, he's putting the whole kingdom on pause. Like, how weird would that be if Joe Biden woke up and he's like, I'm going to go kill Donald Trump. And then he, like, got the FBI, and they, like, went in a little convoy, and they were tracking him down, and Donald Trump's running away from him, and, like, somebody somewhere had to be like, no, this is not what we're doing today. Right? It's kind of a bad situation. David's running away. He's hiding in a cave. You may have heard this story before. Saul comes in. David has an opportunity to kill him once again. So this goes beyond the first one. The first one was this theoretical, I could go and kill Saul. Now it's like, I'm here, and he's right there, and his back's turned, and I got this knife, and crown. And he's in that moment. What's he do? What's he do? He says, who am I to strike down the Lord's anointed? When we think about the second part, who am I to strike down the Lord's anointed? That's bad. You don't do that. No. The first part is the one I want to focus on. Who am I? He was asking himself, am I the guy that does that? How did God make me? Did he make me into being an assassin? Is that how God put me together? No. Even though this is promised to me, I'm not going to go seize it. So Saul dies through some other means. He's in a battle. He dies. David becomes king. Finally gets the crown. After being persecuted, after being chased, after, he went crazy one time. Well, not technically crazy, but he was hiding, and he was afraid people were going to come kill him, so he like drooled on himself and like grew out a crazy beard and acted like a madman so they wouldn't think it was him. All kinds of adventures this guy had. Eventually he's a king. He unifies Israel and Judah, because during that time there's a lot of division in Israel and Judah. Sometimes if you follow kings, they don't get along too well. He unifies them, which is kind of a big deal. He conquers. He moves the ark to Jerusalem, more conquests. And God says that through his line, the temple will be built. And then David has this thing happen where there's this key thing you may have heard before. When kings go to war, right, with him and Bathsheba. So all the kings will go out, they conquer, they do their thing, they engage in battle, and like it or not, that was David's job. He was the guy that God had on the front lines. He was fighting the fight, right? He was doing his thing. He was out there waging war on God's behalf. That was his job. And he decided, man, I got this kingdom I just put together. Life's good. I'm going to kick back a little bit. I'm going to send out my guy Joab, which, if you know that guy, it's not a good idea. I'm going to go send him out to go do his thing. And I'm going to hang back at the castle. And that's when he gets in trouble. He's caught with Bathsheba, kills her husband, tries to take her. Nathan calls him out on it. It's a mess. And after that, you see more mess, right? His son Absalom rebels against him. There's a plague. There's civil unrest. There's all these problems. And that stuff happened because he wasn't being who he was. God made him to go do a thing. And he's like, I've been doing that a while, and I'm going to not do that right now. That's a problem. Does he get in trouble? I know I've gotten in trouble that way. Tell you what, they don't get in trouble when things are hard. It's easy to fight when things are hard, right? Things that, like, you feel the pressure, and you got to, like, step up and, like, something has to happen. If I don't do this, I don't eat tomorrow. But when do we fall to temptation? You're sitting down, bills are paid, everything's warm, everything's comfortable, and it's so easy to just slide into that whatever it is that you got, Maybe you're going to have a couple too many drinks. Maybe you're going to go to that bad place on the internet. Maybe you're going to call up that ex-boyfriend or whoever or whatever situation you got. That happens then. When things are like kind of half bad. And I bet the devil's waiting on that. He sees you doing good and he's like, oh, you're doing good, huh? Let's, it'd be even better. That was David's issue right there. So, David has a spot where, and the story is interesting because the story is told throughout 1st and 2nd Samuel, and eventually David dies. But there's a piece in there that you don't get unless you read Chronicles. So part of Chronicles tells the same stories, which you read the Bible, sometimes they do this, and it's really weird. Because you read the story, and then you read Chronicles, it's the same story, but there's little pieces in there that if you're clever, if you're paying attention, you get a little something there. One of them is David's talking to Solomon. So David's about to die, saying he's going to pass it to Solomon. And I remember when God said that someday, through David's line, the temple will be built. David says, why? He says, God said I couldn't build the temple because I got blood on my hands. That's a hard thing to hear. You know why? Because God told him to do that. You remember that? When he stood in front of the bandits, he goes, God, should I go get him? And God said, go. And he went and he did it. When God said, go and conquer, and David went, and he conquered. And God said, good job. When his life got worse because he didn't go and fight the battles, God told him to do it again and again and again and again, and then David goes, I love you so much, I want to build this temple, and God's like, no, because of all the stuff you did that I asked you to do. What do we think about that? It's a hard word to hear. And I think what I get from that is you can't do it all. Sometimes your giftings may cost you. The kind of person that God made you to be is going to be really good in this area over here, but sometimes that means closing the door on some other stuff over here. That's hard to hear. I did that. That's me, what you just talked about. That's me. Like, I came over here from the West Coast and put all my life on pause so that I can go and chase after ministry and do that. And my goal is to do that. And then God said no. He said, go here, pick up this gun and this badge, go out in this community. Don't do that stuff over there, go do this stuff over here. And as much as it is a blessing to find your armor, to put it on and to know who you are, to know who you are, there's a little bit of grief there too. Because it means if you take this up, if I put on this armor, I'm not wearing that over there. If I'm the kind of person that does this, I'm not the kind of person that does that. It can break your heart. Because it's in my I appreciate, I love, and I enjoy people that can do ministry, that can be full-time. People call them on the phone at 2 a.m. and they answer that phone call and they're excited to pray for them and do all that stuff, and I value that immensely. But it's not my armor. That's not me. That's not who God made me to be. And there was a minute where I sat in that seat over there and teared up, just accepting that, and putting that on, and recognizing what I'd lost because of what I gained. So if you're feeling that, if you've ever had that, if you've ever had your giftings and your talents take you to a place where you lose things, maybe some friends fall off, maybe some career opportunities dry up, it's important to know that, one, that's on purpose. God's not caught unaware. God is not shocked. He knows. He knows. But it's because we're doing something else. It's because we're part of a body. No one of us is going to do all the things. I've heard some amazing stuff from people up here, but they're not going to do everything. They can't do everything. And it looks different. Everybody's piece looks different. Do not listen to the lie that we need to be a certain way. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Do not be conformed to this world. I've had this happen in church. I've had lost church career opportunities because I didn't look and act a certain way. That's of the world, y'all, okay? Someone's telling you that. That's from the world. That's not how we change. I should never feel like I need to dress a certain way and act a certain way in order for God to use me. There's no right way to do that. Who did Jesus call? Did he go out? When I was in Bible college, one thing really set me off. It really set me off. I'm naturally argumentative. I don't know if you know that about me. As much as I love making peace, I also like to argue. It's a weird thing. So I'm on my best behavior. They're having me read all these books. I'm not arguing with nothing. I'm going along with it. I'm being good. I'm doing all my things. And they come this one, and I couldn't handle it. It was talking about how in our church we have X amount of CEOs and X amount of people who are, bankers and lawyers and educated people, and everybody sitting on our board has a PhD, and you can too. And I was like, flip the table. Who did Jesus pick? Who did Jesus pick? Did he go and find the most educated Pharisee in the land to come and be his spokesperson? Did he find the highest centurion officer? What kind of Jesus is that? No, he found the fisherman. He found Simon the Zealot, who liked to stab tax collectors. Then he went and found a tax collector and said, you two have a good time. So there's poor Matthew laying there, shaking, he's looking over. Simon's laying next to him, wide eyes, just staring at him. This guy's going to stab me. Jesus is like, we're going to figure it out one way or the other. No. He picked people from everywhere because he's proved, and he did that to prove a point, right? Jesus didn't do nothing on accident. He didn't just I accidentally called you to come with me. No, he did it on purpose. He didn't show us. He uses everybody where they're at. Doesn't matter your level of education. Doesn't matter how you feel about yourself, your social status. No, God's going to use each and every person, and he's like, we're going to put them together. It's like those people you see, they're really good at cooking. Have you ever seen those? Where they just wander into a kitchen, and they're just, boop, 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 bam, food. That is sorcery to me. I burn things in the microwave. I can't do that. But some people get it. They get it. That's what Jesus does with people. He doesn't pick anybody. He didn't give them 10 people. You got a drug addict, a lawyer, and a Chinese industry worker. And he's like, I can work with that. Let's do it. Let's make a church of those people. And that's good news to me. Man, I like hearing that. And that's my hope of this, is I know I talk about some stuff about when we find our calling, we lose stuff, and that sucks, and that's hard to hear, but know this, because someone else has got it. Man, it's not going to slip through the cracks. Sometimes even with my kids, sometimes I deal with them, and I pour into them, and I give them my heart and my soul, and I try to do everything I can to make them know God as much as they can, but then I hit my limit, and I can't do any more. God has somebody else for that. And I'm hanging on to that because I'm not seeing it right now. But David, for that particular subject, I'm David in the wilderness right now. I'm being tested. And I'm thinking, God, you better show up. He always does. Every time. So kind of through this story, we see kind of this model emerge. We wear somebody else's armor. What are our weapons and armor, our gifts and our talents? Who's God made us to be? How does it change over time? What happens when things get worse? How do we keep ourselves when we're desperate? After we make it, how do we keep ourselves? And what do we give up by taking up our calling? And I think that's stuff that we can soberly sit down and count the cost. And God talks about counting the cost. There's a cost to discipleship. It's not a popular sermon topic, but there's a cost to discipleship. You will lose friends and influence and money, and you will lose things, absolutely. But I count it all, as Paul said, I count it all as rubbish in view of the surpassing value of knowing Christ our Savior. It's a good trade, right? So when you're in that place, when you're chasing after the thing that God made you to do, and you lose something along the way, maybe a part of yourself, maybe a person, it's worth it. So my question for everybody is, where are you? Are you testing out armor? Are you trying to figure out, who am I? How do I do this? Like in God, like you can be you. Man, even then we have this broken understanding of that, don't we? I don't know how many times it's so hard getting to know guys. Like, ladies probably too, but I get more guys because, you go to like social functions and like, this is my husband Ted. And I'm expected to automatically connect with him because we're both the same gender. And so I go and I don't know why we do that, but we do. So I go talk to Ted, like, hey, Ted, what are you all about? How you doing, man? He's like, yeah, I'm a carpenter. Period. Like, that's it? That's just, your entire persondom is just summed up in carpenter. So whatever pops into my head for a carpenter, that's just you. So you swear a lot, like energy drinks and drink on the weekend. That's what comes up to me. That's just you. No, there's something else. It's beyond that. We're more than that. It's more dynamic than that. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm on a tangent, but sometimes I get a hard time when someone's like, who are you? And they're like, oh, my job. I'm like, no, you're not. That's your job. Maybe you are. If you're like an artist and you love art and you're committed to art and you're doing art, then then I guess you could like make that argument. But shoot, you're working at the McDonald's and I ask you who you are. I'm like, I work at McDonald's. Like, stop it. Who are you? Okay. So something to ponder. First of all, do you know? And I didn't know for a long time. Who I was, especially in relation to God. I didn't figure that out. I was trying on different armor. I was trying to be different people. I was trying to do different stuff. It always went so badly. Are you in the tested season? Are you like, I know who I am, and then there's something going on in your life that's hard. It's a challenge. It seems to like weigh that down, to like drag that away from you. It feels like you have to hold on to it. Like it's getting pulled away. Are you in that season? Or have you arrived to a certain degree? Like, I know who I am in God. I'm grounded. I've been through the testing. I'm good. And are you kind of on that like plateau area? Would be really easy to just kind of boop, take a little side trip and step off. I guess the thing God's asking us today. You were made the way you were on purpose. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it. There's too much in the world right now that talks about your identity. Identity is under assault right now in our culture, right? It changes so much. Like, I woke up tomorrow and I was like, oh, I just realized all this time I've been a lady. Like, no, stop it. Stop it. Who are you? You got to figure that out. And when you have it, you got to hold on to it. This is not an excuse for bad behavior, right? You don't get to just be like, yeah, he said something to me, so I just told him off, told me go blah, 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 and I don't talk to him no more. That's just who I am. Just stop it. That's not what I'm talking about. Okay, we're talking about virtue. We're talking about who God made you to be. We're talking about the virtue, the blessings, the things that God put in you to make this place a better place. That's what I'm talking about. That's who you really are. That other stuff is not who you are. Your bad attitude, it's not who you are. I got kids. Sometimes we got a saying in my house. Sometimes I'm like, stop acting like a fool. And they're like, you just called me a fool. I said, no. I said, you were acting like one. I can act like a duck. Quack, quack, quack. It doesn't make me a duck, but I'm acting like one. And you're acting like a fool right now, so knock it off, because that's not who you are. Right? That's our sin nature in us. Paul talks about that. He's struggling with this, like, I really want to do the things I'm not supposed to do, and I don't want to do the things I do supposed to do, because he's recognizing that human condition sometimes to buck against who God made us. It's not an excuse for bad behavior, but freedom from comparison. Put on your own armor. Don't be looking to the left and the right. Don't be looking at someone else's situation, being like, ooh, if I just act a little bit, stop it. Stop it. It is harder. It's easier to do that, right? It's easier to look over and be like, oh, this person's successful. They read these books. They got this degree. I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to go do that. That's easy. It's easy to do that. It's hard to sit there, to look at yourself in the mirror and go, who is that person? Who did God make me to be? And walk out that calling. That's harder. But just like everything else in life, even though it's harder, it means more. Because we've all seen those people living a lie, right? I don't know if y'all have seen them. I've seen them. Where like they're living this way that they've seen other people live, and they got that fake smile, and they like get through life, and they do the thing, and they and there's a part of you that knows that like when no one's around and the lights go out, they just go, when they melt because they're not being who they're supposed to be. So it is for freedom that we are set free. We're beautifully and wonderfully made. God did it on purpose. Accept no substitutes. Go through that process. I guess that's my putting it together is go through that process. Find that thing in you that God made you to do. That thing that gives life, that happens automatically. I think that's my big push. What do you do automatically, right? I'll tell you what, public speaking, maybe that's another sign that I'm not supposed to be pastor forever. This is something that I do. This is not something that I'm like chomping at the bit for. If one day Nathan's up here and is like, I'm going to put this microphone here, and whoever wants can come and grab it, I wouldn't run up. That's not who I am. Some people are. Some people, you know what I'm talking about. Some people like can't wait to get up there and grab it and talk and connect with people and relate, right? Some people do. That's not me. It doesn't mean like that's a source of guilt or shame to know that about yourself. It's something that comes with time and maturity is you're like, yeah, that's not me. I'm this. And I'm okay doing that. So Lord, thank you that we are beautifully and wonderfully made. Thank you for this opportunity to take a breath and to be okay being who we are. And I pray that anybody out there who is struggling with overcoming feelings of inadequacy or questioning who they are or what they are, I ask you to give them grace, you give them mercy, you give them hope. You do nothing on accident. You're a God of order and intentionality. Thank you for doing stuff on purpose. Thank you for making a place in your kingdom for everyone. Thank you for providing a way to get through our hurts and our hang-ups to a place of life and thriving. And even when we don't see it, even when we're out in the desert running for our lives, thank you for the hope that comes with being connected to the creator of the universe. So I pray a blessing on the people in front of me here today, Lord. I pray that they know who they are, first of all, in you. I pray that they weather that burden well, and they're able to maintain. Do not grow weary doing good, because in due season you will reap if you do not lose heart.